Hey guys, it's Deconic, and in this one we are going to be talking about minions, how to level as them, what to do in the end game, um, how to build them properly. Now this is still early on, so this is not a final video on exactly the best practices or what is the meta. This is just what I have found success with and how I personally would recommend leveling and all of that. And as a disclaimer, this is not going to be structured like my regular video where I take bits and pieces and script it. I am going to be one taking this, so it might get a bit rambly, but do bear with me. I will try to keep it as concise as possible, but I will try to get as much information as I can to get you the tools you need for success, basically. So in terms of leveling, I'll go right out and say it. Minions will die. They will die a lot, and they will die again. However, they will do the content you need them to do, and because they are dying as much as they are, you're going to want to pair this with, you're going to want to minimize the revive times just so you can get DPS back as soon as you can. So this is how I leveled up. I took this area, I came here, took the max life revive, took all of this, took the revive, and then I came down here and I picked up the revive here and all of these things. Then I went up here for these nodes. This is my current skill tree. I'm building ES life, and I'm still figuring out what exactly is needed and playing it by ear. But this is, if you want to, a overall scope of my skill tree, it looks like this. If you haven't already, do consider liking and subscribing, as it helps a lot with the algorithm and helps the channel grow overall. Like I said, I can clear T10 maps if I need to. T8, of course, no death, because you can die in this game. Early gems. You're going to start off with the Skeletal Archer, but your first skill gem is going to be Contagion. And the reason you're going to go for Contagion first is this paired with Unearth gives you chaos damage over time on enemies. When they die, their corpses are affected, and Unearth makes your bone constructs carry these corpses. So you're going to use this to clear your first few zones. By the time you get to the Burrower, you should have a Skeletal Sniper. You have a skill gem for the Skeletal Sniper, if I remember correctly. So you just mainly use its Cast Cloud. Now, once you get a few levels into your gems, these reservation costs go down a lot. I think like your first level takes it from like 90 to 60. It's big reservation reductions. You still only have one, but by the time you get to like skill gem 3 or 4, you can then start getting more. I would go for the snipers until I unlock the arsonist, but your actual first minion that you're going to be taking the time to like clear with is probably going to be SRS. Now with SRS, they are under the Sorceress tab, Raging Spirits. They reserve 30 spirits, but once you have them, you can use Flame Wall to proc to summon them, basically. You can pair Flame Wall with Fortress if you want, up to you. I like Fortress because Flame Wall also buffs my projectile minions. So my arsonists, your snipers, all of that would get buffed by having projectiles thrown through it to have bonus fire damage equal to a certain amount, and then making it ignite as well, giving you an easy source of ignite. Same, once the enemies are ignited, it can blow up your archer's gas clouds to then do decent damage. Though this was nerfed, I think the damage should still be fine. Once you have your SRS going, this should be around when you kill the King in the Mist. Once you kill the King in the Mist, you have 30 spirits. That gives you enough for SRS alongside your archers. At this point, you try to get, once you get your first level 3 gem, you're going to get arsonists. With the arsonists, you want to pair them with Scattershot because they throw bombs, and these bombs have an AoE. They shotgun basically. So you want to pair it with Scattershot. And personally, I like to go Martial Tempo, or I mean Acceleration rather. But early on, you would want to go Magnified effects, which would give them AoE. By having more AoE, it means there's more overlap. You're going to use Magnified effect on them until you have AoE nodes on the tree. Once you've gotten them, you can go ahead and drop Magnified effect for other support gems. Now, once you're through that, you just keep getting your main focus is going to be on your SRS. So they'll have things like martial tempo, you have things like fire infusion on them, and then once you start getting more and more arsonists as you level up that gem, and you will start gravitating more towards having your arsonist be your primary DPS. Now, currently in game, my arsonists are doing insane amounts of damage. I will try to put some clips in between like areas so you can actually see how the build is performing in like tier 8 maps and boss fights, stuff like that. Anyways, in the current once you get to end game or even going through the campaign, you would want a lot of spirit, because spirit is how you get a lot of minions. You might see here I have 453 spirits. How did I get this high amount of spirits? Well, firstly, the biggest one of the bigger contributors is your scepter. You want a scepter that has increased spirits, as much increased spirit as possible, and potentially levels if you can get that. Increased spirits means more minions, levels means more damage. So, you know, up to you about preference, but either way, you want something like this. Quality on the scepter also gives you more spirits, so keep that in mind. You can get spirit on your chest piece. It's a very stable source. You can even get a chest piece that has an implicit with spirit, which is so you can have spirit and spirit. You can have spirit on your amulet. Same thing here. You can have a base that has spirits. I think it's called like the solar amulet or something like that. And of course we have the third ascendancy, which reserves life but gives you spirit as a result. All these things overall are how I am making up my big spirits. That's and I just remembered the bosses that give spirit in the campaign. Now we're looking at this King in the Mist, Ignag Duke in Act 3, and the same thing in Crew 3. Same boss actually. So this is going to be 30, 30, and then Akru gives you 40. Anyways, these are all the sources of spirits. You want as much as you can to get a large enough minion army, and you just want to keep putting arsonists up. Basically, your minion army is essentially going to be SRS and arsonists alongside your 2 melee minions that your scepter provides, and you keep these 2 melee minions until the end game when you want to start speccing more towards crit. Then you want to prioritize getting malice, but early on you do want the skeletal warriors. Now for the end game, early on in the end game, progression is, my experience was like progression was a lot slower. Now with the buffs we've gotten to loot, it might be a bit faster for you guys, but you still want to go along with the same format where you have clerics and arsonists. This time the reason you're going clerics is because your arsonists are bound to die, and by having more clerics in the end game, you have mechanics that kind of swarm you and your minions, and if you don't have the clerics, they will die basically, and you will just get overrun because you have no minions DPSing. I have found that 3 to 5 clerics are enough for like 12, like basically a bit under a third of your arsonist as cleric should be fine. So when I had 12 arsonists, I would go 4 or 5 clerics, and I can't do that, but I'm not doing that because I'm reserving spirit in other areas, but I will go over that later. Early on, you might have up to 6 arsonists, 5 arsonists. At this point, you definitely are relying on them for the bulk of your damage. You want to make sure they are the first ones to get your lesser jeweler orbs, because they are doing most of your damage at this point. Eventually, you get your raging spirits to have another support gem. Then your summon Infernal Hound. This guy is going to be in charge of exposure if you want to get him even through the campaign. So you're going to have fire exposure, you're going to have strip away. The idea is he always ignites enemies around him, so he doesn't need any sources of ignite. So you just give him fire exposure, which makes that ignite reduce the enemy's fire resistance by 20. Then you give it strip away to increase the effect, so now it's reducing it by like 26. And then eventually you want Wildfire, which makes it so enemies around a bit further away are also exposed, which means in a clear situation you have more enemies exposed basically, and then we just get Culling Strike as the 4th one when you get to that point. For buffs, we have Flammability. We are currently using, okay, I should have turned off alerts. Yeah, okay, there we go. Flammability with Hex Bloom, so it spreads, spell Cascade, and Magnified effect, so it covers as big of an area as possible. Just so in areas where you're getting swarmed like breaches, you don't really have to keep spamming your curse. They kind of just self-propagate as you kill the enemies that are cursed. Clerics, we have them paired with Last Gasp, and while you have two, you want this to be Ingenuity. You're only going to remove Ingenuity from here the moment you go Blink. Well, we're going to talk about that once we get to the end of this. Pain Offering, we want Font of Rage. This is very important because your Arsonists use attacks. Now, the AoE of the Font of Rage is much smaller than the AoE of the Pain Offering. However, the Font of Rage is a big buff where each point of rage gives you more attack damage, which is a lot of damage for your Arsonists, which would do attacks. It's a very big multiplier on top of the Pain Offering, of course. Then you want Ablation here, which makes it so if your offerings give more bonuses to your minions. Then Expanse gives it more AoEs, and that's to Font of Range and Pain Offering, so it just helps a bit. The 6 seconds is ignorable because by the time it is, let me see, by the time the offering expires, the cooldown is done. So it doesn't really matter unless it dies. Then you don't repetitive want to bring it back. We've gone over clerics, but clerics heal your arsonists and they revive your skeletal minions. It is very important for clerics that you know that they have a cooldown on the revive, so they can't just revive your entire army and they do not have an active. So basically you just want to give them Ingenuity so they revive a bit quicker if you have more than 3 that are dead. But overall they do a pretty good job in keeping minions alive. We have Skeletal Reavers here for one situation, and we're not using this, but that situation is a specific boss fight where it's the giant skeleton boss from Act 2. Whenever we face that boss, Arsonist AI the AI just goes wow. They just lose all reasoning. Basically, they shoot behind the boss, and they never actually hitting the boss. So your DPS is effectively 0. And that sucks. So in that one boss situation, I'm going to unspec all my Arsonists and go for Reavers. But other than that, we don't touch the Reavers. Now for Grim Feasts, I would say this is a reservation you might want to get when your ES starts to take shape. When you have maybe over 500, 600 ES, and Grim Feast can give you a decent chunk of ES. Now, what does Grim Feast do? It gives your dying minions and enemies a chance to drop remnants. Remnants give you flat ES, and this ES can be used to double your current ES, overflow ES. So right now I have 3000 energy shield because I have overflow. My actual max is 1620, as you can see there. So Grim Feast is very good defensively, especially in the end game. I wouldn't use it before just because you'd barely have enough spirit for your minions. And for Blink is a skill that allows you it replaces your dodge roll with literally a teleport. And this feels very, very good. Like, this is what it looks like in practice. It goes through enemies and everything. So very, very, very good reservation. However, it reserves 60 spirit, so it's really a luxury. It's not something you're rushing to get. I didn't get it until like now, and as you can see, I have 10 and 3. I wouldn't go below, let's say, 8 minions for Blink. So the sweet spot, I would say, is when you can have 8 arsonists and 2 clerics alongside your Blink. Then you can consider doing it. But that about covers gem setups. And for the skill tree, I think I've already gone over this, but you want a lot of AoE here because of your overlaps. You want to reduce reservation. You want ES nodes as much as you can because you're going to be reserving life either way. For the fourth ascendancy, I'm going to be going life as extra ES most likely. And the idea here is by having all these changes to increase, like all these sources of increased ES, we actually have enough ES to where the life that is going to be reserved is going to be completely covered by the ES. I'm still going to go for more increased ES most likely because of the way Chaos damage interacts with energy shield. Just so I don't have to worry too much being at 50% life and all. And that about covers it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you haven't already, do consider liking and subscribing. It helps a lot. And with all that said, thank you for watching.